You might not know your why until the end of the project that you're working on. You might know it at the beginning. You might know it at the middle. But what I would encourage folks to do is to make something that is meaningful enough to you that the why of why it matters is way more substantial than just trying to secure a bag. What's up with it, y'all? My name is Trevor Went. I'm an experiential artist based in Chocolate City, Washington, D.C. And we are in episode 1 of the creative breakdown of my series, Niggas in Nature. Now, there are plenty of spaces on YouTube to learn about the technical skill sets of creativity in whatever art form, but where can we talk about creative inspiration? And so I want to fill that gap and kind of help everyone to better tell stories, better tell the things that you feel in your heart, feel inside of you, and make bodies of work. So let's chop it up. Today, I want to talk about why did I create Niggas in Nature? So what's my why behind this series? Straight up, I just want more niggas to explore these stunning outdoor spaces. I first visited like national parks at the end of my college career. There were like some little hikes and stuff like that in preparation for a big trip that I had done, and then some little pieces of stuff that we'd done in like state parks and stuff like that, and some RA training and stuff that I had done, but I had never been to like the Yosemites, the Zions, the Bryce Canyon National Park, like that scale of national park, that scale of visuals that those spaces can hold, until I took this journey. I'd planned on going to seminary in Vancouver, British Columbia after college. Those of y'all who are day ones might remember the body of work I made called The Westward Summer, that whole trip. And in that journey, when I was trying to figure this stuff out, and trying to figure out where I was going to land and what was going down, one of the things that we did, getting this sponsored road trip, was to hit up different national parks and go see some of these visuals. And it was, life-changing, because it was completely different than anything I had ever experienced, anything that I had ever been exposed to. Obviously, we see backgrounds on Microsoft, freaking Windows 97 or some ish, or, see the visuals that might be on computer backgrounds and stuff like that. But that stuff just doesn't even feel real to you. It doesn't feel like it's attainable. I didn't grow up around stuff like that. I grew up in Virginia Beach. Like, I know the beach, but like my experience of that scale of outdoors, and I wasn't a well-traveled person. I just didn't have those things. And so, it was kind of a recognition. It was that kind of became a reckoning for me in a way. With me having experienced stuff like that, and then kind of going on this journey too, I wanted to inspire folks that look like me. I want to inspire my niggas to go, I want y'all to go see these parks, right? So if like you're black US American, you're more than likely like not a stranger to the statement. That's some WPS, that's some white people shit. When talking about nature, when talking about hiking, when talking about the outdoors. And there's a lot of reasons for that, and there's a lot of reasons for the sort of like aversions that people have, like that we have to those spaces, right? Animals, bugs, discomfort, historical experiences with the outside, right? And I've had plenty of these aversions too, and I still have some of these aversions, real talk. Especially anybody who knows me know I don't do no woodland animals. Like, it's not my thing. But, there's certain things that I just want to see that I'm like, all right, we're going to be in these spaces, but I'm not trying to run into, anything out there. Snake, nothing, whatever. I'm not trying to be out there in that mess. But the stuff that I've seen in these parks, and like some of these big scale parks, like, it's unfair that more of us niggas don't see more of this stuff. And so that's the heart, that's the center of why I made this series. In kind of a grandiose perspective of it, it's like a desire to put my niggas on. Like, that's the heart of the project. That's the why behind everything. I have this deep desire to put my niggas on to these types of spaces and the ish that we deserve to experience and that we should be able to experience in this country, especially with our history here. But we'll talk about that at a later time. And then also, like, I wanted to hold into nuance, like, why we have these aversions in this space, right? Why we have these aversions to outdoors, and to hold that, because sometimes you get these sort of like, you get this sort of contrasting opinion, right? Like, you'll get the niggas that are really outdoor niggas and they just like gung-ho about it. And then you get niggas who's like, that's some white people shit. And with that, it's like, there's no space for the nuance of like, what's the bridge here? Why, like, how do we even get here? And so to be able to talk through some of that stuff, but also like talk through it from a space creatively, it was a space that I wanted to step into and wanted to bring niggas to the table to just build and like chop, like you chopping with a homie on this formula. And this whole reason why the vast majority of us have probably not experienced this sort of thing, or don't even understand it as a regular experience, even though it's like in the country that we're living in. Like, there's probably more niggas that, you know, who've gone on vacations and whatnot, who have been to the Caribbean or been to Europe, than have been to these sort of spaces that are quicker, easier, cheaper to get to within our own country, and then still don't necessarily have a context of it. So I'm trying to expand the possibilities of like what we can do as niggas in this country. I think that Black experience is resistance. It's a revolutionary act. So as I said, like, for me, experiencing this stuff personally hit me to the core on just like what my visceral experience was with it. But then I dug deeper out of the curiosity of learning some of the things that I had learned. And then the personal began to hit heavier. I called up my mom. I'd been doing some research into why aren't we in national parks, and like, what's the reason behind these things, when I was working on the beginning of this project. And so I called up my mom and just asked her like the simple question, Mom, what's your relationship to the outdoors? And, you know, like, what was your relationship to the outdoors growing up? And so then we started talking about her history growing up, and like how my grandma only used to let her go to like this one park that was in their area, like down the street from the house. And yo, why is that? And there's so many reasons, like, it's so layered. When we start talking about like, I bet my mom grew up in the South. So you got to talk about someone growing up in the South in a generation before mine, and really 2 generations before mine, if you look at it in a certain way. Of course, they're hesitant to let their kids just go roam free outside, right? Because there's the Klan, right? You know, there's the threat of your kids might not make it back from this park. And so you have to have a closer eye on them. You have to have a closer watch on them, because there's dangers. Like, there's nuance with why our experience with outdoors even comes within that. And then it comes into the tensions of the other pieces of it, of like, you're closer to, like, you're really not that far removed. When you hit my grandma's age, you're not that far removed from the enslavement of my people, like of our people, right? Like, we're not that far removed from our generations that are enslaved. For many people, that far back can be somebody who did experience enslavement. And then if you go back one more generation, you're absolutely in the age of when those people experienced enslavement. So it's really not that far back. And so, of course, the relationship with outside is gonna, or that relationship with outside is going to be more tense, more restrictive. So we talk about like my personal experience, we talk about the enslavement and how that goes into things. In tandem with that stuff, I'm looking at historical records, and then the National Park Service had done a couple of studies where they were breaking down the racial discrimination, segregation, you know, systemic oppression that kept Black folks out of these parks, right? And so then I'm seeing like why we're not in these spaces. I'm seeing that we have a weird relationship with outside because of these establishments, not just the enslavement of our people, but then we're also dealing with the reality of the barriers, the Jim Crow, the Jane Crow, the threats of violence, the reasons why we had the Negro Motorist Green Book, like all these pieces that were connected to us trying to stay safe, but still trying to experience, and how the grander that our experience gets, the more that it pushes up against the status quo that wants us not to experience life in this country. And so all of these tensions are rising for me, because in reality, if we think about our roots, outside is not foreign to us. Outside is not some white people shit. When we think about, if we go back into our roots in Africa, there's plenty of outdoors in Africa, plenty of peoples in our lineage who had the relationship to outdoors that wasn't goofy like it is for us right now. And it's goofy by design because of the desire of the oppressor for us not to experience those things in those sorts of ways. So how do we look at this stuff? How do we reference what our ancestors did and honor that, while honoring our ancestors of more recent past and their experiences in this country and this more, oppressive experience that they've had in relationship to the outdoors. And then from there, also work to expand what our experience looks like in our modern day context. And so this is where all this stuff begins to come to life for me in this project, and why I find it so important. So the last bar of the series is, we built this country, so we deserve to experience every inch of its beauty. And I mean that, because in some ways the series is about taking our power back. It's taking back our power to experience and to see what this earth has to offer us in the short span of time that we get to be here, and then also leaving a lineage that will enable our posterity to do the same, like our kids, like all the kinfolk that come after us, to experience life fuller and have a grander experience of what it looks like to live, breathe, and move out in this stuff. And then also, I think it's about telling us different stories, changing root narratives so that we have different stories to tell the future generations that are going to come after us. Because for me, it's like, oftentimes I find myself educating while inspiring when it comes to the art. Like, I'm always trying to put people on game to new information, but also inspire them to a new height. Like, if you think about like Kendrick's Not Like Us, in that track, he has a whole verse that's dedicated to historical putting on this, historical information about what Atlanta looked like in the space of probably Great Migration era, Industrial Revolution, Great Migration era type situation. And that's probably like a peak of how to mix inspiration, solid art, catchiness, also with like education pieces. And so for me, I find it the same way of trying to create art that is moving while also educating and putting people on game to new ideas. All that is kind of connected to telling better stories, because I believe that we are a summation of the stories that we tell ourselves in many ways. When we tell ourselves these things over and over, those things become ingrained, and those are the things that we pass on and pass on and pass on. We have to be mindful about the stories that we're telling ourselves. And so for me, it's like, let's tell a story that says, yo, no, we deserve to experience this stuff. And it's not white people shit. This is our shit too. And so those are things I'm thinking about. And in all of this, it has to hold tension, right? It has to hold the tension of honoring those who've come before us, and then also holding that nuance of growing, how we look at all of this stuff that includes our ancestors of further past in Africa, ancestors of recent past of enslavement, ancestors of more recent past of Jim Crow, Jane Crow, civil rights movement, Black Power movement, etc. And then, the ages that sit closer to us, and then what it looks like for us now, and then the generations that are younger than us and coming up behind us. And holding all of these things together and holding all the nuances of it, and then elevating together, because we can't just trash what these people's experiences were. We have to hold those things together and see what we can learn from those things and our people's experience on that, and then elevate beyond that. So yeah, that's episode 1, y'all. I'll catch you on the flip for the next episode 2. And yeah, be easy, be safe. Peace.